In 1612, Russia was in a state of near total anarchy, suffering through a devastating period known as the Time of Troubles. War, famine, and plague ravaged the land, and up to a third of the population perished, while foreign armies occupied major Russian cities including Moscow, Smolensk, and Novgorod, and the country itself seemed on the brink of collapse. But Russia fought back as a national uprising formed under the leadership of Prince Dmitry Pozharsky and a merchant named Kuzma Minin, who organized a Russian militia and marched on Moscow, eventually driving out the occupying four Lithuanian forces, bringing an end to one of the darkest chapters in Russian history. Today, this event is commemorated every year on the 4th of November as Russian National Unity Day, recognizing that stability could only return under a legitimate ruler. Russia's National Assembly, the Zemsky Sobor, gathered to elect a new Tsar, choosing a 16-year-old nobleman named Mikhail Romanov. With his election, a new dynasty began, one that would rule Russia for more than 3 centuries. Tsar Mikhail focused on restoring stability after years of chaos, agreeing to territorial concessions in exchange for peace, and giving Russia valuable breathing space to rebuild. His son, Tsar Alexei, later introduced one of the most significant legal reforms in Russian history. In 1649, he enacted a new law code known as the Sobornoye Lozhenai. Nearly 80% of the population became serfs, effectively unfree laborers whose status was inherited by their children and who had no right to leave their masters. At the same time, the Russian Orthodox Church faced its own internal crisis. Those who accepted the reforms became known as reformers, while those who rejected them were called old believers. Meanwhile, conflict with neighboring powers continued. Ukrainian Cossacks, rebelling against the rule of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, turned to Tsar Alexei for protection in return for military support. This alliance triggered the 13 Years' War between Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And when the conflict finally emerged victorious, regaining control of Smolensk and securing authority over eastern Ukraine, expanding its influence westward. But internal unrest was far from over. In southern Russia, a rebellion erupted under the leadership of a renegade Cossack named Stenka Razin, whose uprising spread chaos across the region and challenged the authority of the Tsarist government. Eventually, the revolt was crushed. Razin was captured and brought to Moscow, where he was publicly executed as a warning against further rebellion. Later, Russia came under the rule of Tsar Fyodor III, a sickly but highly educated monarch who nevertheless pursued important reforms. One of his most notable acts was abolishing the system of местничество, which had assigned government positions based on noble birth rather than ability. But his reign was short, as Fyodor died at just 19 years old. Power then passed to his sister Sophia, who ruled as Princess Regent on behalf of her younger brothers, the joint Tsars Ivan V and Peter I. During this period, Russia signed an important agreement with the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, known as the Treaty of Eternal Peace, bringing an end to centuries of conflict between the two states. Russia also joined the Holy League, a coalition formed to fight against the expanding Ottoman Empire, and Sophia's regency also saw the signing of the first treaty between Russia and China, establishing a defined frontier between the two vast empires. But Sophia's rule would not last. At just 17 years old, Peter seized power from his half-sister and began a reign that would transform Russia forever. Peter became the first Russian ruler to travel extensively in Europe. During his famous journey known as the Grand Embassy, he visited many European courts seeking allies in Russia's war against the Ottoman Empire, while also studying Western science, shipbuilding, and military organization, determined to modernize his country. The war against Turkey ended successfully with the Treaty of Constantinople, which gave Russia control of Azov, an important fortress on the southern frontier, though the Ottoman Empire still controlled access to the Black Sea. Peter then launched an ambitious program of reforms designed to turn Russia into a modern European power. He demanded that Russian nobles adopt European customs and dress, and those who refused to shave their traditional beards were forced to pay a special beard tax. Peter also built Russia's first navy, reorganized the army and government, and encouraged the growth of industry, trade, and education. Soon Russia was drawn into another major conflict, the Great Northern War. In this struggle, Russia joined forces with Poland, Lithuania, and Denmark against the dominant Baltic power of the time, Sweden. The war began disastrously for Russia. At the Battle of Narva, the Swedish King Charles XII inflicted a crushing defeat on Peter's army, yet Peter learned from the disaster and gradually rebuilt and modernized his forces. Eventually, Russia achieved a decisive victory over Charles at the famous Battle of Poltava. Meanwhile, on the Baltic coast, Peter began constructing a new capital city, St. Petersburg, built on marshland along the Baltic Sea. The project was an extraordinary achievement, though it came at a terrible human cost, as many thousands of laborers suffered and died during its construction. The Great Northern War finally ended with the Treaty of Nystad, confirming Russia as the new dominant power in the Baltic region. 4 years before his death, Peter was formally honored with the title Peter the Great, father of his country, emperor of all the Russias. After Peter's death, the Russian throne passed through a turbulent series of rulers. He was first succeeded by his wife Catherine I, followed by his grandson Peter II, who died of smallpox at just 14 years old. Next came Empress Anna Ioannovna, daughter of Peter the Great's half-brother Ivan V. Her reign became known for its extravagant court and the influence of her favorite Ernst Byron. During Anna's rule, the Danish explorer Vitus Bering, serving in the Russian Navy, led expeditions across the northern Pacific, charting the coast of Alaska, discovering the Aleutian Islands, and giving his name to the Bering Sea, which separates Russia and North America. After Anna's death, the infant Ivan VI briefly became Tsar, but he was soon overthrown by Elizabeth, the daughter of Peter the Great. Ivan spent the rest of his life imprisoned. In alliance with France and Austria, she led Russia into the 7 Years' War against Frederick the Great of Prussia. Russian forces achieved a major victory at the Battle of Kunersdorf, inflicting one of Frederick's worst defeats, though Russia ultimately failed to capitalize on the victory. During Elizabeth's reign, construction of the magnificent Winter Palace in St. Petersburg was completed. Elizabeth was succeeded by Peter III, grandson of Peter the Great. Raised in Germany, Peter barely spoke Russian and greatly admired Frederick the Great. In a shocking decision, he switched Russia's side in the 7 Years' War, saving Frederick from near-certain defeat. His actions angered many officers in the Russian army, and he had long been despised by his wife Catherine. With the support of the military, she organized a coup that overthrew Peter III, and just a week later he died in suspicious circumstances. His wife Catherine now ruled Russia as Empress Catherine II, better known as Catherine the Great. Her reign would become one of the most powerful and influential in Russian history, as she expanded Russian territory, strengthened the empire's position in Europe, and continued the transformation of Russia into a major imperial power. From the chaos of the time of troubles, the Romanov dynasty had built a vast empire that now stood among the great powers of the world.